A very good afternoon, Lovish, and thank you for joining us. So Lovish, congratulations once again from the journey from 6:50 to a 7:30. And that
Thank
was
you.
like from a time when you were preparing on your own, and I think you took a few sources, and then from that time to the time when you joined GMATWhiz, and then you gave the exam. So you tell us about a bit about your journey from that time to this time, kind of what you did.
Yeah, thanks, Sunita. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. I mean, you guys have been such an integral part of my GMAT journey. It just feels great to come back and talk to you. So just to give you a bit of background about myself, I'm currently based out of Dubai, and I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering in India. And post that, I moved to Middle East. And since last 8 years, I've been working in first banking and then technology sector here. I currently had the analytics function for a Middle East-based technology company. Almost a year back, I embarked on this GMAT journey amidst the pandemic. So I started, as you said, with self-studies, but in my first attempt, I was only able to score a 650. Then I realized that I need some help, so I enrolled myself with GMATWhiz, and the rest is history, I guess. So scoring a 750 certainly feels relieving.
I
Yeah.
know that when it flashed across the screen, I think you must have been for a moment, oh, it's
Absolutely,
there,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And if I'm correct, from a verbal 29 to a verbal 41, that's like
Yes.
crazy improvement, crazy actually. Quant was more or less stable in your case, both the times, but verbal it's an amazing improvement. So just a quick question here. What led you to GMATWhiz, I mean, I'm sure, so you mentioned earlier that you'd taken up a little bit of, Manhattan prep and all. What led you towards GMATWhiz, like?
So yeah, I think when I scored a verbal 29, I could really see that, hey, I needed some help, right? Uh, Actually, surprisingly, I was scoring in my mocks around 690, 700 at the time, and verbal was okay. It was around 33, 34. When I scored a 29, I really realized that something is happening in verbal which I'm not necessarily able to gauge. The variation is a lot. So that's when, as I said, I realized I need professional help. And at the time, I was referring to GMAT Club and YouTube for all the content that I can get in to
Right.
understand. That's when I came across you guys, and then I had an initial conversation with Piyush from GMATWhiz.
Yeah.
And in my initial discussion with him was so eye-opening. So obviously I was struggling with harder questions, but when I was discussing with him, it came out that even in some areas, I was getting the easy questions wrong, right? And he
Right. With the
highlighted.
verbal 29, that's very indicative that you must have been getting easy questions wrong and early on. Yes.
Absolutely. So then I realized that I need to work on my fundamentals, and that's when Piyush introduced me to you, and then we worked together to improve the verbal skills from the ground up.
Great, great. So when you took up GMATWhiz the first time when you went through the course, right? What was it that you found very different from what you'd been doing till before that? I remember during our first couple of sessions that I was telling you that Lovish, the approach there is actually no approach. You were mostly solving the questions kind of, I think, ad hoc basis as they come and your feel of it. So you tell us in your words that what you'd been doing earlier with those questions and which you think in retrospect didn't work, and what GMATWhiz brought for you, fresh on
Absolutely.
the plate.
So I think when it comes to verbal, what I was doing was, first of all, cramping up all the grammar aspects of it, trying to at least for the sentence correction. And I thought my CR was okay, but I was taking a lot of time. And when I say okay, I was still scoring an accuracy of 60%. So it
Right.
was just in that context. But I feel, looking back, it was not structured. I was not focusing on what are my strength areas, what are my weakness areas. I was looking at the question, trying to use options to answer, and it was very gut feel based rather than
Mm.
being confident in terms of why a choice is right versus wrong. I think that I was really missing. And as I said, once I scored what I scored, I really felt that it can't be that. It can't be that I'm not aware why a choice is right, why a choice is wrong. So that
Exactly.
was a very big area. So on the coming on the GMAT platform, both the platform and working with you, I think I was introduced to the frameworks that you guys use, and the frameworks were quite eye-opening. I remember that just by going through the modules and working with you, I was able to increase my accuracy to as high as 80% across sections.
Yes, I remember that.
Where I did struggle, even at that time, was with the timing aspect of it.
Timing, yes.
Yes.
I think I remember till towards the end, I remember you saying that, accuracy has gone up across all three areas, but timing is something that is
Yes.
still troubling me.
Yes.
And I think I kept telling you that, you need to microanalyze your time. Where was it going without sacrificing the approach? In fact, I would love you to tell our all viewers out there that a lot of them are always worried about the time, right? When, the approach versus the time, and sort of they think that time saving is the best way to is the best approach. So could
I
you
also,
just
yeah, I also used to initially think that time saving is the best approach. See, at the end of the day, it's a timed exam, so you would want to
right,
not miss any questions. I think that
right,
plays at the back of your mind. But what I really realized as I was following the approach was getting me the accuracy. As I said, where I was struggling with the time, and based on your guidance, I actually remember making an Excel, doing questions from SC and CR, and jotting down each and every element of it. How much time I'm
great.
spending in reading the question, how much time I'm spending in pre-thinking, how much time I'm spending in analyzing the options, and that gave me real insight in the sense that I was able to really figure out, hey, initially I was taking time in pre-thinking, but over practice I realized that that time significantly dropped. Then I realized that when I was looking at options, I was spending a lot of time reviewing options, one versus the other. Over time, as I came to realize that there are certain type of traps that GMAT throws at you, I was able to identify them earlier and eventually. So all in all, to summarize, I think the thing with time is it does play a big factor, and it also, for me at least, it was really hampering my confidence when I was approaching the exam. But with practice, I was able to really get a true sense of where I'm spending time, and then as I was working towards improving that, that really helped me improve the time.
So today you believe that more than just the concepts, it's important to have a very, very rock solid approach
Yes,
on which
absolutely.
you can fall back on, right? So talking about approach, a quick, since your improvement has been amazing in the verbal area, so I'm going to kind of focus a little bit there. Uh, what did you do in terms of SC? Like, what was the change in approach versus, what you were doing earlier and what you did with GMATWhiz? Only SC, like, if you can
Okay.
elaborate on that.
Sure. So with SE, initially what I used to do was I would read a question, and based on my understanding of the principles and my gut instinct, I would go through the options and then try to eliminate. What was a fundamental shift with the GMAT-WIS framework was the meaning-based approach on SE, right? Really going through each and every single word and understanding and connecting the meaning, and to come to realize that honestly, some questions, even harder ones, some questions are so meaning based. You
True.
cannot do it just based on principles. It's not
Absolutely.
a mechanical process. It is a bit more intuitive, where you read to understand the meaning, and then go ahead and really review each and every option against that meaning. And that was a fundamental shift I felt in the approach.
Right. And I think I do remember that me telling you that make sure that after every question that you solve, you go through the solutions. How much did that help? That
This is where the GMATWhiz platform really helped me, if I be honest with you. The questions there, as I was, so initially what happened, Sunita, was to build that meaning-based approach that did not came very intuitive to me.
absolutely
So that's where the solutioning and the platform helped, because on the platform, I remember there was a great detailed analysis of the question and the answer, both for proprietary GMATWhiz questions as well as for the official guide ones. That really helped me. That really helped me tune my approach and thinking towards that. How
great.
and when you do it, especially for difficult questions, even the official GMAT guide ones, That was really eye-opening and helped me. So I think the detailed analysis of answers was super important.
Right. Because I think a lot of students out there, they usually just check the solutions if they feel they've done something wrong, and that's about it. Hardly anybody spends time going over the solution if they've got the question right. And I think that's a great learning. And as you said, you were actually writing down stuff, that what you were doing, how much time you were taking to do what. Okay, great. So that was the meaning-based approach, as you said, that breaking down the sentence and reading and making sure that you went through the solutions, detailed solutions as such. And when it comes to CR, again, earlier and then compared to GMATWhiz.
Yeah, so CR was a very interesting section for the fact that initially when I started preparing for my GMAT, I was very scared with SC. And I thought that CR would be relatively better because it's more reason-based, logic-based,
Right.
and stuff. But over time, I came to realize CR was a section where I was spending the most time. It was a section where I was really struggling with accuracy. And it was a section where you had to really pay attention to details of what the question is. So CR, when I started with CR, again, I was not doing any pre-thinking. Sometimes pre-thinking would happen, but that would happen intuitively, if at all. It was not necessary. And as you said initially, right, it was ad hoc.
Ad
Uh,
hoc, when
yeah,
required, as in when something came up,
exactly.
something did not come up, right?
Exactly. Going through the CR module, I was amazed with the framework on pre-thinking. It took me
Just
time, but
elaborate on that. When you say framework, I guess the viewers might not really understand what it means by the framework.
absolutely. So the framework around cause and effect, the framework around plan and goal, the framework around the quant-based questions on
Right.
CR. So that really helped me get accustomed to seeing CR questions, realizing what kind of a question it was, and what's some basis pre-thinking steps that I have to take to do that. That
Right.
really helped me. And over time, and as I said, also relating back to the time aspect of it. When I initially started following the framework, I would take time to still pre-think because I was so new at it. But over time, when I started doing the questions, and it became second nature.
You
I
like
could
stuck to the process. You never gave up on that. And that, I guess, helped you reduce the time. Great,
absolutely.
great, great, great. And then in CR as well, the same thing as far as the solutions go, like you were able to use the solutions to, broaden your way of thinking for, let's say, later questions.
Absolutely. And I think the solutions really helped me come to understand one more important aspect of CR, which is really understanding what kind of options come in and what are some of the areas where you can falter in options. I
Great.
remember, especially in strength and weakness questions, I would struggle with questions which were with options rather, which were
Right.
slightly out of scope.
I remember that. I still remember telling you that, you need to focus between, okay, once you have come to the choices, you've read the stimulus, you've done your pre-thinking, but at the same time, you also have to go through your answer choices in detail. You have to focus on the meaning of the answer choice first, then you apply it. I remember, and so
Yeah,
you did that.
absolutely. Yeah, and the scope, defining the scope was something that was really an eye opener, and that eventually became part of the pre-thinking in terms
Yes.
of, hey, here is the conclusion, this is an underlining assumption, and this is the scope, and that really helped improve accuracy on the strength and weaken questions for
Great,
sure.
because I think what I see a lot of around is, okay, a lot of emphasis is given on the aspect of pre-thinking by almost any prep company. But I think hardly anybody focuses on telling a student, hey, look, you need to understand the scope of your conclusion, because, we always say this is an out of scope answer choice, but what does that even mean? So great, and you stuck to that. That's the thing, that you, despite the time that you were taking, you never gave up on the approach, and I guess that shows in the score that is out there. Wonderful. And when it comes to RC, then so
Yeah, so RC, I'll tell you how I used to initially approach RC. I was always a quick reader, so I could read
so
text.
that brings, I remember telling you, okay, you read too fast.
Yeah.
And the first RC session that we had, I was like, you just read too fast, we're going to read that fast. I don't know what you'll understand, right? I remember that remark now. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, I was always a quick reader, and I would actually, and it also intuitively comes, right? That,
Right.
okay, here is an RC section. You'll at least get 3 to 4 RC prompts in your exam. You have to read through them quickly, answer the questions, move on, because that was
Right.
the most time consuming section,
Absolutely.
any which ways. So, the fact that evolved and involved framework actually asks you to stop and actually reflect as you're reading was something that I initially really struggled with. Uh, and I would
Because
do
you
that.
don't
And
intuitively, normally nobody intuitively does that, right?
absolutely, absolutely right. And just to and I found some similarities in terms of how I approached the SC questions and the RC questions, and that was
Wonderful. I'm just so glad you mentioned this. Please mention this again, that you found that transition from SCCR to RC.
absolutely right. So, I mean, so in SC questions, to get to the meaning, you have to really look at each and every word, what it relates to, and what's the overall meaning that the author is trying to convey. That was exactly similar to the RC aspect of it. Within the evolved and involved framework, I would read through every single line properly, try to understand, try to connect it with the previous
Great.
section of the prompt, and that really, I think, improved my overall understanding. Initially, again, it increased the time for me, but over time I realized that while it is increasing time to read the prompt, in terms of questions, my accuracy is really improving, and I was okay with that initial increase, but the overall net impact was that the overall time was reducing. It was something which was a bit tricky at first, uh, because you're not necessarily confident, right, when
Yes,
you're
you
approaching
think
it.
that, I guess it, as a student, you always think that, will this work? Like in the exam, will I be able to do this? Will I be able to read like this? You know?
Yeah, and yeah, but that thing I really realized that, hey, this is the right way of doing it. And I remember I was struggling with inference based RC questions a lot.
Yes.
uh, my accuracy was 10%, honestly, when I
My
started
God.
out.
Just,
But the approach eventually helped me. I don't think so I would have
I
necessarily
think the
improved
best
on
part
that
was
element.
you stuck to the approach. You showed that diligence, and this is something that, as a very strong message, would like to give out to students. That people think that it's just the time that needs to be saved, and one should do things quickly and just know the rules. But what you have told so far, it's very important to understand the fundamentals, the basic concept. It's verbal reasoning, right?
True.
Great, 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 wonderful. Okay, so what about quant? Like quant, I think. It stayed stable, right? Your quant was
Yeah.
already, I think, earlier also it was pretty good. So did you
Yeah.
do
So
any? Did you? I can actually go through the quant part of.
actually, I went through the con part of the module, and that certainly helped improve my confidence in the concepts.
Right.
What I realized happened even on the day of the exam was that I got stuck in a couple of questions, and that kind of did derail me in the overall exam. But overall, my confidence, and also coming from a background of Indian male engineer, that puts quant in the third section. So I was largely focused on verbal
Oh.
throughout the prep, for the reason that, yeah, my verbal, I realized, was extremely suffering initially. So yeah.
And that's very funny because one, usually somebody who's really had a, let's say, a good command over the language doesn't think twice. No, that, okay, I'm good in English, and how difficult can it really get, right? Verbal reasoning, or how difficult can an English section get? Okay, there'll be some grammar rules, there'll be some CR, some little bit of thinking, but I think GMAT really requires you to have a very, very deep analysis of the exam itself. So, Lavish, your advice to students out there who are preparing, who are aspiring to give the exam, whether they are freshers or retakers, or even, full time, with a full time job? Like in your case, I remember initially during your earlier days, you said that, Sunita, I won't be able to give more than a couple of hours a day during the weekdays, and a little more over the weekends. It's a really busy schedule. Especially with work from home, I guess it's just become more work. So I
Absolutely.
remember that. And with all of that, what would be your advice to, students who are struggling with their preparation?
Yeah, I think you touched upon the work aspect of things. I remember, especially last year at office, I was spending more than 12 hours a day. I think the only advice I would give on that aspect is stick to the consistency, right? I remember, especially towards the days I was approaching my exam the second time, I would ensure that I spend at least 30 minutes, even on a hectic day,
Mm-hmm.
doing something rather than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that over time really helped me because I was able to cover something, right? At least on those 5 days rather than not doing anything during the weekdays and then cramping up everything on
Right.
weekends. So that would be my advice, to be consistent. In terms of the sectional advice, as you said, right? I mean, identify your strengths and weaknesses, focus on your weak areas, and be structured when you approach those areas. I remember going through the entire GMATWhiz platform. Plus, I made a comprehensive error log myself. And I was so detailed in my error log, and works for some, doesn't work for some, but really worked for me. My error log, I would really tag each and every question as red, green, or yellow. Red is something that I was
Yes.
finding it really difficult. I don't know what to do with it, and I was getting wrong. Yellow was something that I would, I found it some sort of difficult in terms of understanding the concepts of it, but I was still able to attempt and get a question right. And then the green was essentially I was able to get that, and to have that kind of structure, that kind of focus. And lastly, I think Sunita, you also mentioned, right, sticking to the framework
Yes.
approach.
Very, very.
That really and I, in just the moment I switched to the framework approach, one thing that I really saw from that very moment when I made the switch was that my accuracy went up. Then it became more of a function of how do you improve time, and sticking
Right.
to the approach really helped me improve time. So
So
with
you did
practice,
it
that
all
will.
at, stepwise, like one thing at a time. So what usually people do is at the same time they want the accuracy and they want the time to go down and all of it has to come together, but doesn't happen like that,
Doesn't
right? I
happen
mean,
that way.
it took time to first get to that accuracy, get your approach consolidated. So accuracy improves, work on your weak areas, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment, and then take care of the timing, which was the last thing that you did, right? So when
Absolutely.
you say that you worked on your weak areas, just that part, what would you do? Let's say, suppose you identify, I mean, if you look at, let's say, either SC or CR, so let's say you identified a weak area, then what would you do to improve on that? Like, what was the steps that you would take?
So a couple of things, right? So let's say I identified a weak area, and CR for me, strength and weakness were weak areas
Right.
as I approach. So the way I would break it down is what is the weakness around. So I'm getting the question wrong. That's fine, but is there any particular type of question that I'm getting wrong within that section
Right.
itself? So I would look at that.
Uh-huh.
In CR, it meant whether it was a plan goal question or cause effect question, right? Uh, so that was one aspect of it. Then the second aspect was, okay, I'm getting this wrong, whether there is a fundamental gap in my understanding,
Mm-hmm.
or am I struggling with the prompt rethinking, or am I struggling with options? In CR it meant that. In SC, what it meant was, what is this particular section? So I remember in comparisons I used to struggle. so
Yes.
so what aspect of comparison, right? And then break it down by that. And I was also looking at the time aspect of things, where I'm spending more time on that,
More
and
time,
then
yes.
try to find more questions of that nature, do that, and sometimes go as basic as actually reading the entire solution prompt and then doing them again and again. It was a bit tedious, but I really think it helped me
It paid off.
yeah,
It paid
right.
off. I think that's you mentioned tedious. So I think that is where some people lose patience. GMAT is a very demanding exam, and to give up on your process and lose patience won't get you anywhere, because again, this is also something that a lot of students face difficulty with, the pressure of the preparation, and they keep solving a lot of questions, but from what you're saying, I don't think you solved too many. It wasn't the quantity of questions, but you took it slow and steady, as you said. Even 30 minutes a day, if you had, you would make sure you would do something, rather than just put a stop to all of it, right? Okay,
Absolutely, absolutely,
great, great,
absolutely.
great.
And I think one aspect of the exam which really comes on the forefront, not during your prep, but especially on the day of the exam. What is your mindset? I remember when I took my first attempt, I was uh, cramming everything up. I remember when I went and took the exam, even 2 hours before the exam, I was trying to go through some of the
Okay, so
concepts.
you were like that school days we used to have, no?
Yeah,
And
I mean,
last minute we are
yeah,
just
just
looking up the thing.
cram everything up. But I think the second time around, because I was because I also had the experience from the first time, that that's not the right way of doing it. I think what really helped was the fact that, okay, it's at the end of the day, it's an exam, it's an important exam, but it's an exam, and you are better served if you are not necessarily taking a lot of
Right.
tension around it, right? So that in the second attempt really worked out, and all the work that you have done in your prep will certainly pay off. It's more
That should.
about holding your nerves, and this is so true in the verbal section, because as we discussed, right, in RC section, if you're running through the prompt quickly, and which you tend to do on the day of your exam, uh, holding your nerves at that time is super important. So practicing that would was a certain help. So I remember I did not take a lot of mocks. I took 5 official GMAT
That's also
mocks.
very important to know, because you have students giving mocks, just giving mocks, just giving mocks, just giving mocks. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I did not do that. I gave mocks just to see how, if I'm able to really sit through that. And in the initial mocks, I realized it was a struggle. How I approached that again was that I would actually take 1 hour slots, because that's your typical average of a
Right.
section, right? So I would typically ensure that every day when I'm sitting, I take a chunk of 1 hour spending and doing questions, and then review the questions later. I do that for verbal, I do that for quant, and I think that really helped me over time, improve on holding my nerves during that 1 hour.
I think
So I
that's a
think that
very
helped.
interesting thing that you mentioned, because everybody prepares for the exam itself in terms of the areas, but getting yourself exam ready. So it's a 3 hour grueling exam, each section about at least an hour long, and it is not easy. So as you said, to mentally prepare yourself for that exam thing is also very, very important. Um, just the last question, so in terms of the quality of questions that you practiced on for GMAT from the GMATWhiz platform, and you've given the exam twice, how close, how comparable was that? And the mocks also, the GMATWhiz mocks that you took, how comparable was that to the original thing?
So I would actually say, in terms of the concepts, they were very close in terms of the concepts that I tested on the exam. In terms of the difficulty, I felt the GMAT Viz was slightly difficult.
More
Uh,
difficult?
More
Okay,
difficult,
all
for
right.
sure.
Did that help you? The little bit more difficult, did that help?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I was, and I remember talking to you, especially on the RC section about that, right?
Yeah,
So,
I know,
uh,
I know. I was like, I know, I was like, I kept thinking that it wasn't intentional, but just that I felt that our students should be tested like this. Yeah, you told me, I remember that.
but absolutely, I'll tell you that really helped me on RC, because I was practicing a slightly higher difficult
Right.
questions. When it came to the actual exam, I found it to be a bit more breezy, and that helped me, as I talked about holding your nerves, right? So that
Right.
really helped me with that. Okay, here's an RC prompt which I really understand during the exam, and then the questions. Okay, I can see how different options are framed and what's the right one.
Right.
So I think that really helped me.
You
That
were
helped me.
prepared, like you were like ready to face the toughest, and then it was slightly a little lower, so
Right,
it was you were
absolutely,
more comfortable
absolutely,
in that area.
absolutely, absolutely.
Great, great,
Yeah, but
wonderful.
on the other sections, SC and CR, I really feel that the content was really apt. It touched upon various aspects of things that were really tested. So also helped me, put all of that in kind of a mental framework. Okay, these are the kind of questions will
That
come
will
for
come.
SC. These are the kind of things that can be
Right,
tested
right.
for
I
CR.
think
So there
that
was
is
not a lot of,
important.
uh, yeah. So that was largely it.
For a
Yeah.
student who is, I mean, every student who's going to give the exam is scared, knowing that I have all the tools in my arsenal to tackle something, that gave you confidence. It's so very evident. Wonderful, great, great. So now you must be like your applications and all. You're busy with that, or I mean, what are the plans next?
So yeah, this year I'm planning to research for schools and apply in them.
Round,
So
round,
right,
round. I guess so. That would definitely be it for round one, I guess.
yes, yes.
For this year.
So it will be.
Great, great. So all the very, 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 very best, Lavish. You worked hard. You've really worked hard. But the best thing that you've done is you've been very consistent with your hard work. You've been consistent with your, and you chose a course which struck a chord with you, I think. mostly.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I guess for all students out there, it's important to do your homework, do your research, and find out what works for you, and accordingly take up. Great. So Lavish, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I'm sure whoever listens to this interview will definitely learn from what a student should do and what a student should not do. Blindly follow all the things out there. So thank you so much and all the best, Lavish.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.